Hello, R users. My name is John Koulas. I'm a 20-year professor of industrial and organizational psychology, an 11-year user of R for normal, boring, statistical, and analytical operations. But for the last 8 or 9 years, I've also been within that same environment that I specify my R analyses. I've been crafting entire projects. So we don't go back and forth between no stinking Microsoft Word and R. No, we do all the writing that we want to do within R. And so every week I hang out here, and occasionally I'm joined by some fellow purveyors of what's sometimes referred to as literate programming. And we're just here to promote this way of constructing your work. If you are doing analytical, if you're doing heavy analytical work and you're using R, you're using Python, or the last couple of weeks we've been taking a look at this kind of newer to us language called Julia. There's no reason to not be executing your full project within the same platform. So you can craft a report, you can make a paper, you can do slide presentations, you can do it all within the same platform. And it's so neat and it's so fun. And I believe so strongly in it that even though I'm an industrial psychologist, which is different than an industrious psychologist, so and I'm not, I haven't been that industrious as an industrial psychologist, so I'm not an industrious industrial psychologist. I'm an industrial psychologist who's somewhat lacking in being industrious because I'm doing this instead of actually working. So instead of actually working, I'm here promoting this because I think it's so doggone important. It's just so, again, fun, but it's so important if you're interested in minimizing error and the consequence of error in your data management practices. So we're here every Tuesday at 7 o'clock Eastern, and the main thing we want to do is be a resource. If there's other people out there who are interested in doing this, maybe you don't know how to get started, maybe you're already doing it, but you want somebody to bounce some ideas off of, we're here for that. And so the way that might work, it hasn't happened yet, but the way that I envision that might work is through interacting via comments. So if you have a question, if you have a something that you're working on, or if you just maybe want someone to bounce some ideas off of, feel free to leave a comment. I know most people that seem to be using these seem to prefer to use them not while they're live, but after the fact. That's fine too. However you want to use them is fine, but we're going to be here. If you ever want to interact with us, it's always going to be me, and hopefully sometimes there'll be some other people stopping by as well. But we're here, 7 to 8 o'clock roughly each Tuesday. Now, I've been rather professorial in these last couple of weeks in that kind of got caught up on some interesting things and went over, and that was notorious for that as a professor. The next professor would be waiting there trying to get in the room, or would kind of slowly sneak their way into the room and give me a side eye. But I have no one give me a side eye at YouTube, so we sometimes go a little bit over that 8 o'clock Eastern time. But in the absence of people popping by and asking questions, what we've been doing is we've been taking focal issues and just looking at little diced up segments, little features, little capabilities within these authoring platforms that we're focused on. And we've been just taking a look at them. We've been exploring them, and we've been trying to give ourselves a good sense of what capabilities are, because these capabilities keep expanding. And again, one of the reasons I'm doing this weekly session is because the ability to do this has the threshold in terms of getting started doing this type of work has never been lower in terms of just being having access to the ability to craft your entire project from within the same platform. Quarto has been fantastic for that. Quarto evolved from a prior ecosystem of crafting documents using R as your primary analytical platform that collectively were known as R Markdown. But today we have this system called Quarto, and the last couple of weeks we've been exploring a different environment within which to interact with Quarto, and different environment within which to interact with languages, analytical languages. And so we've played with Python, which isn't what we normally do here weekly, but 2 weeks ago we did some Python. And last week we did some Julia. And tonight, I think what we'll do is we'll actually see if we can get R within that scripting environment called JupyterLab. And JupyterLab, I've been playing the off week here between last Tuesday and today or tonight. I've actually been using JupyterLab for a very unforeseen purpose. So I didn't see this happening. Um, but I've been using it as a markdown editor, and I think I'm going to hold off on explaining that until we get to M in the alphabet. Those of you that put up with my rambling, thank you first of all, those of you that do put up with my rambling. But those of you that have been here and listened to me ramble know that the reason we're looking at Jupyter is because we're taking topics now sequentially using the alphabet as a guide, and we're up to the letter J. JKLM is only 4 weeks away. So I think in 4 weeks, our M topic will probably be marked down, and we'll revisit probably Jupyter Lab at that point, because I use RStudio as a markdown editor, but now I'm also this last week I've been using JupyterLab, and I really like it. I've been having so much fun with JupyterLab. Hopefully those of you that have been following along have installed it and taken it for a test spin if you hadn't prior, as I've just been having a ton of fun with it. So tonight we're going to take a look at a Quarto extension within JupyterLab. So we'll go back to JupyterLab. This is the last week we'll be in outer space here for these topics, I think, at least until Markdown night. So we're going to take a break from JupyterLab over the course of the next 3 weeks or so. These weekly sessions, other than the last 2 weeks, they've been almost entirely executed through RStudio. So this isn't something we typically do, but it's been a lot of fun. I did not have a lot of fun when we took a look at Positron, kind of the newer IDE that is being supported by Posit, the same company that brought us RStudio. I haven't had as much fun with that, but we're going to give it another shot. I've had a ton of fun with JupyterLab, which is surprising to me because I fundamentally the way that I am promoting the structuring of your work in these reproducible research kind of workflows. I don't like the idea of notebooks, but I just really like that environment. It's fun. Okay, so enough of me gushing about JupyterLab. We're going to play with it again tonight, so you'll all be able to see JupyterLab tonight. But before we get into that, let's see if we can remember what actually happened last time here.
Well, it seems that our heroes are leaping from the frying pan into the fire, for they are actually returning to Bleakley Mansion, hideout of the dreadful 6-foot metal-munching mechanical mice.
Duty's calling us, Bullwinkle.
I'm a little hard of hearing myself.
High on the roof, the big cheese, alias Boris Badenov, had already spotted them.
Let's give them old-fashioned Bedinov welcome.
How's that, darling?
We throw flowers.
Throw flowers?
Still in pots, of course.
And the scurvy sneak hurled a large urn down at our friends. Fortunately, the quick-witted squirrel saw it coming.
Bullwinkle. There's a great big flower pot coming down right at your
Oh!
head.
You're a fast thinker, Rock, but you're kind of a slow talker.
However, since the flower pot had struck Bullwinkle squarely on the head, little damage had been done.
I don't know. That pot's never going to be the same again.
In a moment, our heroes found themselves in the kitchen of Bleakley Mansion.
Now to plan our attack, Bullwinkle.
Attack?
Scurvy sneak. I'm gonna have to write. So I have it now. I have this kind of list. It's an old paper bibliography from a paper, and it's just ridiculously marked up. It's very old school, but I might need to transfer some of these notes from Rocky and Bullwinkle over to some sort of more modern kind of note-taking device, such as maybe JupyterLab. Scurvy. I just get scared with scurvy. I love the language that they're using. I don't know why I don't notice them when I cut them up, but I notice them when we hear our weekly transitions here. So thank you, Rocky and Bullwinkle. I appreciate your transition. Last week, so 2 weeks ago, we installed Julia. Again, a language that's newer to me. but it's not a new language. It is a language that the development of it, if we track kind of version numbers, it's definitely younger than something like R or something like Python, but it's been around for a while. And Julia, just like R and Python, fundamentally it's and I'm oversimplifying, but fundamentally it's a calculator. It and it's kind of difficult to think that way when you see these just kind of very sophisticated applications that we have for R and Python and Julia. But we installed Julia 2 weeks ago. We installed JupyterLab 2 weeks ago as well. And then last week, what we did was we wanted to craft a Quarto document using Julia through the JupyterLab interface. And so we did that. And the way that the steps, if we were to deconstruct the steps that we took in order to render a Quarto document within Jupyter powered by Julia, what we did was we first installed Julia. There's a hyperlink on but the slides, as always, are in the comments. And again, if you come at this video at sometime soon after the live session, I don't know if that's 24 hours or 12 hours or what it is, but apparently the comments aren't going to be necessarily available to you, but they're in the description. So the description of the video, I think I've been pretty good at putting a hyperlink to the weekly slides in there. There's also I've started also putting in a link to the how to get started video that we did I don't know, a few months ago, and that's because some of these topics that we're looking at are probably a little more intermediate level in terms of this literate programming workflow and kind of orientation. Now, the other thing I guess I should mention quickly before we get too far into Julia, the other thing that I'm doing now is there's hyperlinks to previous week's slides on the second slide, so you'll always have access to that if you want to go back and get a little more detail in terms of the installation. So that will detail more the installation of both Julia and JupyterLab if you look at last week's slide presentation. But after we installed Julia on our computer, we accessed Julia, and within Julia, the calculator itself, we just specified these two commands using package and then package add pkg. So using pkg and then pkg.add, and we added iJulia. iJulia is it's called a kernel, and so this activates the Julia kernel within JupyterLab, makes it accessible to JupyterLab. And then, so once that's done within Julia, you can kind of ignore Julia, close Julia, say, I'm sorry, dear, but I have other things going on. Go ahead and close Julia. And then you can open up JupyterLab. And within JupyterLab, you're going to see this Julia kernel available. And so previously, before we did that, we only had access to Python. And the reason we had access to Python is we used Python to install JupyterLab. And tonight, I think what we're going to do is we're going to see if we can expand this a little bit. And so we're going to see if we can have access not just to the Python engine and the Julia engine, but we'll also, because this is kind of the focus of what we've been doing weekly, we'll see if we can have access to the R engine as well. I don't know how popular R is within JupyterLab. My impression is, well, my impression might not be accurate, but again, I've mentioned this a couple weeks ago. My perspective on Jupyter was heavily associated and affiliated with Python as a language, and that's not. It doesn't need to be the case. So we have Julia in there now. We have Python in there now. We're gonna get R in there. I think we can do that tonight before we put Jupyter to bed. And then in terms of rendering a Quarto document, what we did was we opened a terminal from within JupyterLab, and we'll go through this process again tonight, so we'll revisit this. And then there's two options within the terminal. You can either render or you can preview. And I think last week all we did was renderings. We didn't do any previews. And if you render the document is going to be located within your project folder. within JupyterLab. If you preview the document, you're going to have a link to that document in the console, and that link is going to be, again, I don't think we did this last week, but we'll do it tonight, and then we'll also see if that operates any differently once we access the Quarto extension for JupyterLab, which I'm really excited to check out. I haven't even hardly looked into it. Of course, these philosophy on these weekly sessions is that we go through this together. These aren't intended to be smooth tutorials. These are really exploratory in terms of these features. And then the beginning of the next week, I'll try to cut it up in a little more presentable format. The one thing, there's a couple of things I think that we did last week that in retrospect, once we shut down, I'm like, I'm not sure I should have done that. One was how we closed out of the JupyterLab sessions. And so there's a terminal, and then there's an interface as well. And the interface, you can just close out of the browser for that. But we shouldn't just close out of the terminal the same way. We should actually actively make sure it's closed. And the way that that's typically done is through keyboard shortcuts, and so Control-C. So we'll do that tonight. I'll walk you through that. So hopefully we'll be at least closing it correctly. So today, or tonight rather, now that it's past Halloween, it's really dark here in Minnesota. So I think we can, maybe I'll change this to tonight. I don't change these slides all that much. Actually, one thing I did this week, this morning actually, was I made these inline code blocks to try to be consistent with the actual real code blocks that you see here. That say Quarto render. And so I did a little playing with those. So those look a little different this week than they have previously on these slides. But other than that kind of little tweaking, I don't do a lot of alteration to what we have here, because I've kind of grown to like the format that we created on this, the Pink Panther theme that we have. So tonight what we're going to do is we are going to check out that Quarto extension from within JupyterLab. And again, we're kind of, the reason we got on this JupyterLab kick was gentle urging, gentle nod or nudge, I guess, from Grok. And this was a couple of weeks ago on the 16th of October. I did a AI query and just said, hey, I didn't explain the larger context, which is this weekly kind of session, this live coding and Q&A, intended Q&A kind of open session. But I did say, I'm curious about Julia. I use Quarto, and can I do this within RStudio? Because we didn't see a lot of RStudio. We didn't see RStudio really mentioned too much when we accessed the Quarto help pages in terms of accessing and using Julia. The interfaces that were explicit within Quarto in terms of using Julia were JupyterLab and I think VS Code and Positron. So went to AI, and AI said, you should probably check out Jupyter. And so we have, and tonight we'll be using Jupyter again. I really like it. I'm surprised at how much I like it. And what we did last week was we played quite a bit and had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun just rendering Quarto documents from within JupyterLab, and it works fine. But there's also an extension, and we didn't have time last week to check out this extension. So tonight we're gonna see if we can access it and check it out. With the thought that, just like the neighbor here that's trying to put out the fire with a vacuum cleaner, maybe there's kind of a better way to interact with these Quarto documents within JupyterLab. So there's an extension. We might as well at least check it out. I don't think, honestly, from as impressed as I was last week with the experience of rendering Quarto documents within JupyterLab, I don't feel personally like an extension is something I really need. I'm just really impressed, but we'll check it out. There's on these slides for Jupyter, since Jupyter's new to me, and I assume most of you that are accessing this There's some what I call additional resources, but these are some YouTube tutorials that helped me in terms of introducing me to JupyterLab. This is the third week that I've played with it. That when we installed it 3 weeks ago, that was literally the first time I've ever used it. So these are helpful. I'm not going to go over them. We did use, I already mentioned this, we did use Python as the route through which we installed JupyterLab, but you don't need to do that. And last week's slides will walk you through and give you access to some other options if you prefer other options in terms of installing JupyterLab. Now, last week we also went ahead and accessed and used Julia. And what I want to do this week is I want to access and use R. So we're gonna get R installed on our machine. We're gonna get R initialized within JupyterLab such that we can run our scripts that have R code chunks within them, having R power the analyses that we do, the data visualizations, the manipulations that we actually do. So I'm going to minimize my screen here, and I'm going to open up a JupyterLab session, and we do that through the command prompt. And the one thing that is a little different in terms of accessing the program itself is you're going to want to navigate to the location on your computer where you have all of the stuff that you want to access. So within our studio, we've been structuring our work such that we have project files. This is the same concept here. We're just accessing the project folder a little differently. So here we're actually going to navigate to the project folder, the directories that we want on our local computer within the command prompt. And we've been using just some simple, I call them MS-DOS commands. I'm not sure if that's accurate. When I learned these commands, I was learning about MS-DOS. And so the command that is most helpful for navigating these command prompts is just cd. cd ... takes you down one level. cd and then the thing that you want to access takes you up one level. And then the other command that we talked about that's helpful is dir. That'll give you a view of everything that's in the current directory. Now, if dir is a little too long, a little too big to display on your page, you can also do a dir/p, and that'll give you a directory per page. And so what I'm looking for here is I was looking for a directory that we created last week, and I actually see it here. So it's Europa. Diego was here last week, and Diego's from Europe, and we were also talking about Jupiter and the moons of Jupiter. And so one of the moons of Jupiter is Europa, and so that's how we settled on a Europa directory. So I'm going to go in there. I don't remember what's in there, honestly. But so I'm just there on my terminal, and I can do this from any folder location that we want. But to access the interface itself, I'm just going to type JupyterLab, Jupyter Space Lab, hit return, and now it'll spool up, and it'll be associated with that location on my computer. I love that little animation that happens with it. Now, I'm not sure why, and again, I've only been playing with this for 2 weeks now, and I don't have anything optimized. I don't have any options. I don't have anything done other than the just default installation on here. But one of the things that you'll see on tutorials is the page that typically comes up on an empty JupyterLab session is this, and this is called the launcher, and the launcher is accessible just through this plus sign here. I'm in my folder tab if you look on the very left in terms of the types of things you can navigate within JupyterLab by default. And so you'll see I have access to two different engines in terms of these notebooks, and we played with Python initially, and we played with Julia last week. What I would love to do is to actually also play with R. And so within this week's slides, I have access to a tutorial that says how to connect R to JupyterLab. And it's kind of, the process looks it looks similar to what we did with Julia, in the sense that we're going to have to go within the program, the core program itself in order to initialize something within the program. So last week we went within Julia, and again, if we wanted to spool up Julia, I guess I'm not going to do that because we have a session going right now. One of the things that I did last week that I regret is we had too many terminals open. But if we just type Julia at the terminal prompt, it'll spin up a Julia session. And within that Julia session, we added the commands that I have in this week's slide deck. So within the most straightforward tutorial that I saw in terms of getting JupyterLab to be glitching, sorry. That was happening this morning as well on a meeting that I had. I don't know, I look like Max Headroom, which is okay because I love the 80s. I love the 90s more than the 80s, but I guess it's okay. So what we're going to need is R for Windows. I'm assuming everyone watching this has access to R. On my computer, I'm kind of embarrassed to show this because I haven't updated it for a while, but I have R 4.5. And Jupyter Notebook, as you see, we don't have Jupyter Notebook. We have JupyterLab, but this should work for JupyterLab just like Jupyter Notebook. And it wants us to install R, which we've already done. I guess probably what it should say is initialize R, I think. We shouldn't need to, and I mean, yes, you need R installed. But it's wanting us to install a bunch of packages. Now, I don't know why there's a concatenated list of many packages, and then there's a separate IR kernel package. It just is odd. The one thing I'll say here that is a little different is we're going to use R from the R GUI instead of accessing R via our normal kind of IDE. So normally I would access R through RStudio. We accessed Julia through the Julia GUI. We're going to through the Julia portal. We're going to access R directly through the R portal as well. And I'm just pasting in the install packages command. Again, it doesn't like there. It doesn't. So sometimes, sometimes these, and this happens in RStudio as well. I'm guessing what happened here is sometimes these single quotes come in, they look funny to me. So they look like ticks. And that's probably, yeah, I can see it now because if I do a single quote, I'll do a single quote here on one of these so you can see it. It doesn't matter if you use single or double on here. But on the dev, I'm not going to install DevTools actually, I already have that. But I'll do a single quote on UUID, which is possible. I have it. I don't know. But the error that we saw, it doesn't like that tick. That's something that is not that unusual. Oh my goodness, I haven't seen this for probably 10 years. Does anyone remember these things when you're first learning R? This guy comes up and you're told to find someplace close to you. Hey, Iowa is still there. Oh, this is nostalgic. This is nostalgia right here. I have not installed packages through R itself for, man, it might be 10 years. Okay, so I'm happy we got that. I guess I interrupted myself, but the way in which quotes and double quotes are sometimes represented on on different rendered products or actual published products doesn't always come through within the editors that we use, such as RStudio or even Notepad is wonderful because Notepad generally will take this and let's do that. Let's see if this works. So we know that installing package ikernel is not going to work if I just put it straight into R. And again, I'm going to quibble with the authors of this website who, first of all, they gave us funky single quotes, but secondly, why do they have two different, why didn't they just include iKernel in that concatenated list there? I don't like that. Although I do like that they say you don't need Anaconda. All right, I take back everything I said, people. If I, it's not going to work. I was going to say if I paste this into Notepad and then copy it from Notepad, it's probably going to work with an R, but it looks to me like it's not. Yeah, it's still coming in funny. So those, be on the lookout for those not apostrophe, what are they called? Quotes and double quotes. Those quotes and double quotes, they can really kind of, if you're going from one system to another, that's a common source of error. So, and then we make the kernel available to Jupyter system-wide. So if you are on a machine that has multiple user profiles on it, you probably want to do this. And I actually do have multiple profiles on this, but I only use one. So I'm going to go ahead and use the first command here, which is irkernel. It's from the irkernel package, which we just installed, and the function itself is called install spec. And that install spec is supposed to make R available, accessible from within JupyterLab. Okay, so open a notebook and open a new script. Now, probably not going to be here now because we just did that. Let's exit JupyterLab. And I'll show you the way to exit these terminals. It's recommended you do a Control C, although it looks like I already had a timeout. So one thing I guess we didn't talk about with JupyterLab, but JupyterLab is going to, because it's interactive, it is going to have a timeout associated with it. Now you can change that, but it looks to me like that's a 3 minute probably, 30,000 milliseconds, I'm guessing that is. So can't be 30 seconds. It's got to be a 3 minute timeout. I'm guessing that seems a little severe. I mentioned Julia. We could access Julia if we wanted to, and that's what that looks like. So 2 plus 2. What's 2 plus 2, Julia? Now, one thing we saw with Julia is the assignment operator is a equal sign. But one of the funny things is it gives you the value when you don't ask for it, and that's different. That's different from R. Anyway, so that's neither here nor there. I guess we're not going to do much with Julia tonight. Oh, doggone it! I got to get back to my Europa. I guess I don't have to, but we might as well. Might as well stay in that folder just so I don't clutter my machine too much. Now the expectation is if we look for and open a new notebook that we're now going to have access to R. Look at that. That's awesome. So let's create a new notebook using R. And so the kernel, you can see up in the right hand corner here, it says what you're using, and right now we only have access to 3 because we installed explicitly. We installed 3 of them. Okay, cool. So the other thing we're going to do is we were going to do the Quarto extension, which is supposed to be the focus of tonight. Let's take a look at one of our old notebooks. We did this last week or 2 weeks. Last week, I think we did this. Yeah, that's Chili Willy. We did this with Python as an engine, and what we're creating here is a reveal.js slide. So we can just stick with that. That's fine. In my terminal, I'm going to ask for that to be rendered. So I'm going to say Quarto. And I should probably change my theming so you can see this a little better. The default in terms of the text script itself, it's coming through yellow. and I know that's very difficult to see, but I'm saying Quarto render, and then I'm going to say the notebook that I want to render, which is penguins.ipynb. And then Quarto should do a little work here. And then if I look, and again, it's in my left-hand column, but I'm not sure how to get that to pull up in an environment that's going to reflect everything we want it to reflect. So I'm going to pull it up in just through my file explorer, and there we see penguins, and that's kind of how we used it last week. There's another option that we didn't use last week, which is preview, and preview is really neat. It's probably the way you should be interacting with these Quarto documents within JupyterLab. So instead of Quarto render, I'm going to say Quarto preview, and this is going to should look a little different. So now what I get at the bottom of my terminal here is I get an option to browse at, and then localhost. So this is just going to be local to my machine. And if I hit that, I get the same rendered Quarto slide deck. But now if I want to change something, this is kind of a living document here. So I'll try to leave it so we can see it. But if I change the title from penguins, let's change it from penguins to, I don't know, what, polar bears, I guess, eat penguins, right? Oops, sorry. You know what I did there? I had this active, so I think I hit presentation mode. Didn't want to do that. So I'm going to try to minimize, trying to access this so we can see both of these at the same time. So this is a preview that you see on the right, and if I change penguins to polar bears, and then save this notebook, you see immediately the preview pane has changed. So it's reflective right away of the content that we're actually changing. And so preview, you can do previews as well. I know our studio has been kind of marketing the preview capabilities for a while. I haven't played with them, but I do like it quite a bit here within JupyterLab. And you can do this even with, this works supposedly, I haven't tried it, but supposedly it works even with PDFs, which is really neat. Now we've played with these colors before too. We can change any of these that we want. I think FFF is, now one of the things I really like about our studio, I don't think that did anything. What's going on here? So one of the things that happened last week as well is it got kind of big in terms of, what doesn't it like? I wonder if each time, yeah, so each time we enter these notebooks, we're going to have to go through those, cells individually just to make sure everything's loading the way we want. And so that's what was happening with FFF. I thought that was red. Red's maybe 444? Now, when it's all the same, when you have a hexadecimal code that's all the same in terms of the same characters, you should be able to just use 3 instead of using 6. But I should be able to use 6 as well. Okay, so when we hit save within our preview, we should see that actually reflected. And I have so many doggone tabs open right now that it's kind of hard to actually see. Okay, so one of the ways in which you can interact with these notebooks is just using the terminal, which is what we did here. We did a render, which put this document within our project folder. We also did a preview, which spooled up an interactive preview of what we're doing. And if we want to change it, we can change it in the notebook, and it will show itself in the preview. That's kind of neat. Now, supposedly, the Quarto extension is going to make some of these capabilities even kind of a little bit smoother. So let's bring up this week's slides again. So, because I have a hyperlink in there to kind of how to access the extension. And actually I have a few of them in there, but this extension should, it enables notebooks which use Quarto Markdown to display the contents. I'm not sure how different this is going to look. I do know that there's a different extension for JupyterLab 4 versus JupyterLab 3. We just installed this, so I'm pretty sure we are running JupyterLab 4. I know I just saw not that long ago. There we go. So yeah, we're on version 4.4.9. So we're going to want to install the extension for Jupyter 4. There's a couple of different ways to access it. Supposedly we can do it straight. We can pip, since we have Python installed, and that's how we installed JupyterLab to begin with. But we should also be able to do it from within the user interface, and I think that'll be kind of fun to check out. So again, those 4 default left-hand sidebar global or larger category options. One of them is this jigsaw puzzle, and the jigsaw puzzle should give us access to these extensions, not just for Quarto, but other capabilities as well. So let's try that. So we should be able to just type Quarto in the extension bar there. So I'm going to go to my jigsaw puzzle, and you'll see I don't have, oh, it looks like there is, it's just giving us options. So I don't have these installed yet. It's just giving me a bunch of spam, kind of, I guess. But we're going to look for Quarto. And there it is. That can't be easier. There's an install button. We'll try that. What's this simple? Oh, that's the overall interface. So we'll try the install. I'm getting this snake, this blue snake that's running across my screen from left to right. Refresh the web page. Oh no, not that. Anything but that. That's very doable. So we can do that. Now if I look in my extensions installed section here, I'm going to minimize that discover spammy tab. So it's installed. I don't know what the capabilities are, honestly. I'm not sure what it does. When we hit that hyperlink, it brings us to a GitHub repository. I read enough to know that it's supposed to make the rendering process a little smoother. It allows JupyterLab to render notebooks, which include markdown content. Well, we don't need that because we've already done that. What I was curious to see is if there's any sort of kind of helper functions or any kind of sort of shortcuts that show up in terms of buttons and things like that. Now, I don't see anything that looks much different here. So let's go ahead and just make within R, we'll make a YAML specification. So again, this is the front matter of our Quarto documents. And I'm just going to say the format of this, I want it to be HTML. And then one of the things I wanted to see is if we had any autocomplete here as well. I don't see any autocomplete. One of the things we haven't tried is code fold, which is neat within which is neat within HTML files. And what I want to do is I want to look for the right command. It is code dash fold, and it should give us interactive access to the code. I guess we can just use this code right here. So let's do that. We'll get this trend line. I think that's a low S curve is what they call that. It looks like with standard errors around it. I don't know if that's smooth enough for a low S or not. It should say in here, geom smooth. I'm not sure what the function is in terms of the smoothing itself, but regression purists don't like that. So I'm going to comment this out for now, and let's put a code block in. Woo! I don't know what I just did there. I hit the wrong combination of keys and I lost my sidebar. There you are, sidebar. So I'm going to run my raw line. I'm going to run. Look at that. It actually worked. Okay. So let's see if we can render this at this. We'll preview it. We'll see if we can preview it. And again, you can kind of put these two different boxes wherever you want. I can actually kind of minimize this a little bit. And I'm going to say Quarto preview. Should have given this a title, shouldn't I have? It's got a title. It's called Untitled 2. We'll just stick with Untitled 2. So I'm doing a preview on the Untitled 2. I don't know if I saved it. Did I save it? Looks like I didn't. So I didn't. Oh, I did save it. You know, so one of the things that I've been struggling with a little bit in terms of JupyterLab is the back and forth between the output and the code itself. And again, this is because this is not something that's comfortable to me, going back and doing these kind of interactions. These interactions with the file itself, I much prefer, and I think it's important actually, to be able to structure your documents such that the information at the top is executed first, and then it goes sequentially from the top to the bottom. There's my document. I think what's happening in terms of me not always getting the output that I expect to see is that I'm not always saving very carefully what's been done. That's, again, I kind of have my RStudio optimized such that when I render or knit something, that I don't have to save it. It does that automatically. And so it's probably just me in terms of having a little bit of user flubbing with that. Let's go ahead and put a title in here. Now I'm not seeing a whole lot that's really different with the extension versus without the extension. You know, we're bumping up against 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern already. And so what I might do is we'll play with this a little bit, but I think I'll also have to, before next week's recap, what I'll do is I'll do some digging and see what the extension's supposed to be helping us with that I don't really see it helping us with. Like, to me, this is no different with the extension than without. Now, it's also possible that since we just installed JupyterLab, it's possible that the extension has already been folded into this version of JupyterLab. That would not surprise me at all. What were we going to say? Polar bears love penguins. I think that just timed out on me. So we'll go ahead and save that. See if that shows up in a preview. It does. I do like that. That's neat. If I do the code fold, if I uncomment the code fold, now my expectation is this gray block should turn into an interactive kind of We can have it if we want, but the default is going to be not to show it. So I'm just going to save, and there it goes. So that's pretty neat. We do have this error. Oh, it is low S. Okay, that's a low S function. So warnings and errors are actually probably good. Let's see if we can turn that off, even though it's good. I don't know if that's a warning or an error. I think error, is error an option? Boy, it's been a while since I've just written without looking. Yeah, and so there, it's a lot cleaner and crisper. Of course, we should add a picture. We like pictures. So let's add a polar bear chasing penguin. Now, I know that, oh, there's a game. That's a weird autocomplete. Now, I know that Chili Willy does have a enemy, and that enemy, I believe, I don't think he's a polar bear. He's a bear, but he looks like a as a lower states biased person, I guess. I almost called him a regular bear. I guess I did call him a regular bear. Now, a regular bear to me is a brown bear or a black bear. So again, I'm going to right click on this image, and I don't know why that came up. I'm going to right click on the image address is what I want. I probably hit the wrong thing there. And then within my notebook, and these notebooks get really cluttered. So I love it. I'm having fun with it, but they seem to get cluttered really easily. Like to me, it's not all that easy to look through the notebook in terms of just kind of seeing what's there. It seems like there's a lot that's there, and it's not the easiest thing to navigate and stay on top of what's there, which I guess is another reason to solicit Quarto, because Quarto turns this mess into this this left-hand mess into the nice thing that we see on the right here. So I'm going to go ahead and save again with the expectation that our polar bear shows up. There he is. The preview, I really do like the preview. We did not use that last week, but we could add a theme to this as well. And so we're powering this with R. That's something new as well. Recently viewed because, is this where we found Dracula? No, we did not find Dracula here. There's so many of these. I'm not sure which one's really going to stand out. And I don't really want to look through all of them. Pulse is, see, it's purple, but that purple is only going to show up if we had a web page is where that really shows up. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to find kind of a darker theme one, maybe with a black background. It should be darkly. So we should be able to, within our notebook, try a theme. Now, I'm not sure if that theme, I believe, and we're not getting the auto indents either, which I was kind of hoping that maybe the extension might do something with that. There we see darkly come through. So this preview is really neat. So I'm glad that we spent a little time on these notebooks and rendering these notebooks within rendering Quarto documents from within JupyterLab. I'm glad we've done this because it's neat, and I really do like this preview here. Now, again, I haven't played with the preview capabilities within RStudio, as I frequently work with Quarto documents. Cyborg is another. So Cyborg, it looks like we should be able to see the font change a little more. So let's try Cyborg, and then I'll quit messing around with this here. So Cyborg, and again, all I'm doing is hitting save. These cells have already been executed, and that seems to be key and important in terms of the notebook. So within these notebooks, you do want to make sure that you execute these cells. If you do not, they're not going to show up in this rendered document. Now, there is one last thing I guess we should take a look at. is there is an option, and I think I saw it in the Julia help page section. There is some discussion about a command you may want to put in your YAML that actually executes all of the cells within your Jupyter notebook, because that's not something by default that's going to actually happen. And here it is. You can actually you could do this in your specification at the terminal when you're asking for the document to be rendered, but we should also be able to put that in our YAML. And so I'm going to copy this execute enabled true, and we'll put that, again, our YAML is already starting to get kind of big here. But I'm going to add a cell down here, and let's add some more code. Let's do a different R graph. And I'm not going to theme. I didn't want that. Why'd you autocorrect to that? These computers, they think they're smarter than us. They probably are, but the autocomplete gets to be a little much. Ooh, you know what? I like that. See this ggplot, how it's specified there in the light blue? I like that. I said earlier tonight that I was playing with the slides, and I know this seems very ADHD of me, but I might go back and change this. So this is completely off topic, but these that I did in terms of tick specifications, I wanted to make them a little more, a little less subtle, a little more overt in terms of you or whoever accesses this understanding that this is an actual command that you use. I like this blue a lot better than what I did, so I might go in and change that between this week and next. It's funny the things you notice when you choose to author things this way. Little things like that actually stand out. All right, so let's look for a nice ggplot here that we can throw in, and we'll try to not execute the cell, but we'll include the execution command within our YAML, which means that when we save, we might expect to see it in our preview. We'll see. So ggplot, I guess that the ikernel that we initiated must also be communicating with our libraries, because we didn't do any specific packages. Here we go. Here's fine. We'll just use this one. But it's definitely finding ggplot. Did I call it the library? I must have called it the library. Yeah, library ggplot. Okay. So we're going to do one more command down here, and we already have ggplot specified in our chunk up here. Now, if this was normally, if this were a normal Quarto document, what we would do is probably load all our libraries within one chunk. These cells operate a little bit differently in that, again, they're intended to be executed kind of one by one. But my expectation is that I do not need a second ggplot library command within this cell. And it's not run yet, so you can see that on the left-hand side, there's no blue or orange bar saying that, yep, this is something that we've already dealt with. By putting this execute enabled true in the YAML, my expectation or my hope or my wonderment is whether or not we're going to get that ggplot extra graph. We'll see. Whoops, I hit play. Sorry, I wanted to hit save. Okay, I'm getting an error on my path, so I'm going to try that preview command again. Oh, you know what? I think when I hit the wrong doggone button, that's when that happened. So I'm going to have to preview my untitled again. Now, again, I did not run this cell, but the YAML actually says go ahead and execute everything. So we'll see. We'll see. So it didn't like something here. Let's exit and come back in. I don't think that was my script, but maybe it was. And again, we're trying something different, trying to actually see if we can force that execution without first running the cell. And that's not the way these notebooks are intended to be used. But we'll try it again. We'll see. Yeah, I'm not liking the way this is looking. I wonder if the render is going to work. Now the rendering to me makes more sense in terms of actually working. It says it doesn't like the path. What did I do? What did I mess up? Let's go ahead and try to run these individually. The navigation in here is really wonky. It just kind of is. Okay, I'm in some loop here. It definitely doesn't like something. It seems almost like I hit some button that I should not have hit. So let's bear with me for a second here. Let's see if we can figure out what's going here. I'm guessing if I get rid of this new chunk that I have, that it's still not going to work. It shouldn't work. Like, I don't see why it would. It's almost like it's not connected. So it's almost like it's not seeing my path. Yeah. So I think it's my terminals, again, maybe I'm not interacting quite as efficiently with the terminals as I should be. We'll see if we can get it to work. It seemed like it was a connection. It wasn't, there wasn't a good link between this document that we're seeing here. I'm going to copy that and get rid of it just because it was working before we did anything with that. I don't see why that would have any effect. Yeah, it doesn't like the path. Now again, I can't really see the errors. So there's no error there. We'll do a quick Google search on that. Otherwise, it's going to have to be something that I come back with next week and re-walk you through what's going through. File paths or environment configurations. Yeah, so it's assuming the same thing I was assuming, which is, it seems like it doesn't like where this is, but where this is. And why am I not seeing where this is? So I'm not able to see from that navigation there in terms of what I was hoping to be able to see. I'm going to look for my untitled 2 Jupyter source file. And of course now it's going to now it's spinning up positron. Okay, I mean this looks like what we want it to look like. So it's finding the file. Okay, the file is in there. I'm wondering if it has something to do with the R kernel. So let's just try change that to, I don't want Julia. Let's see if we can change that to Python quick and see if we can get this to actually render. Now we would need a Python code block, but we have a picture in there that's sufficient. So we'll see if we can render that. Oops, I didn't save it. Okay, yeah, we're stuck in some loop. It doesn't like the path that we're actually in. It can't find stuff. So I think I'm gonna have to probably solve that between this week and next and figure out what's going on. It did actually render with Python, but it doesn't like R. So we might have screwed up something in terms of our R specification and access to R. So let's see if we can get a preview on this. Yeah, it looks like it's working fine with Python. It just does not. We screwed up R somehow. We screwed up R. Of all the things to screw up, how do you screw up R? Okay, so I'll try to figure out how we disconnected from our kernel, which I was so excited that we actually got access to. Let's try to force it for a second here. I'm going to try to force it. I'm forcing R. What do you think about that, JupyterLab? Huh? Mr. Python JupyterLab, what do you think about that? Do I still have... I don't know if I still have... No, I don't have my ggplot. I don't have my ggplot saved, so... I'm gonna find it again and reinstall it. See if it can actually power this now that we restarted the kernel. Try to run that. Looks like it ran. No, it doesn't. Yeah. It doesn't like something. Doesn't like something when we mess with R. Doggone it. Yeah. It's not like an R. So that's good, actually. I mean, so it's probably not something that we messed up with, but it for whatever reason, R was working fine. Now R is not working fine. It might have something to do with the way that I installed R in terms of making it viewable, which doesn't make any sense because it worked the first time. All right, let me do some exploration into that and figure out why R started giving us problems. Because R was doing fine for such a long time. But we got Python, we got Julia, and we kind of got, I mean, we got R for a little bit, but we didn't get R as wonderfully as we wanted to get R. So next week, at the beginning of next week, I'll give an overview of, what will I give an overview of? I guess I'll do a little more digging in terms of what the Quarto extension is supposed to do for JupyterLab, that maybe we just didn't see it. Try to do some digging in terms of, is that because the extension's already been wrapped in, because it already does everything we wanted it to do? Because to me, it looks like JupyterLab works great with Quarto without the extension, and we're not really seeing a whole lot of added capability with the extension. And then I'll also see if I can figure out how we got disconnected from R, or how R became kind of problematic for us here within this JupyterLab session. Okay, and then we'll move on to K. So we'll have some topics starting with the letter K. All right, so happy literate programming, everybody.